Yeah, I'm back, and here I am in Blighty with all the flags flying proudly with rainbows on them, and we love the NHS. Okay, we've got Tesco's workers going around now with T-shirts on saying we're all in this together. I can't go in any shops; it's just like Big Brother announcements non-stop. Um, and staff members panicking that I'm getting too close to people. It's just mad. Honestly, the world has gone mad. Okay, I've got some really big news for you here. The For those of you who said the film Contagion was predictive programming, I can officially tell you that it was predictive programming, because the people who are responsible for this policy, this 2006 Bush policy of lockdown and social distancing, are the same people that advised on the film Contagion. Okay, the first time social distancing, the awful phrase social distancing, was used in the UK media, in the media anywhere, was in 2006. Yeah, and it was in a paper written by a 14-year-old schoolgirl, which the Bush regime used to justify. Well, that's where it all came from. Okay, and the second time it was used was in the film Contagion, and in the film Contagion, the people that advised the filmmakers, so it is officially a CIA predictive programming film, Contagion. Social distancing was, and like I say, we've traced it back. There's been some really good research. I'm going to tell you about it now, and it reveals basically that. It's the same lot that did 9/11, 322.
And the Bush administration had an apocalyptic feel to it at the time, and the same reason they went to war in Iraq, to save the region for democracy and freedom, and ended up destroying it. So too did the Bush administration adopt the lockdown strategy and social distancing, it's a phrase I actually despise, as official national policy. So the doctors lost. The doctors lost. And that was 14 years ago. It did become national policy. If you saw the movie Contagion, you'll see that, that the whole apparatus is part of the. Some of these guys were consultants on that movie. Is the whole central planning apparatus and the shutdown of the economy, violation of human rights, and everything was part of that movie. You can see it. That's why when you watch, this is very spooky actually. If you watch the movie Contagion, you feel like you're watching a fictional foreshadowing of everything that's happened.
I've been tipped off about this. The American Institute for Economic Research, the 2006 origins of the lockdown. Okay, now this is going to reveal that this was all put in place as the new 9/11 by the same guy who did the old 9/11.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
It was Bush in 2006.
So it goes something like this. You remember the Iraq, it was 9/11, George W. Bush, invaded Iraq and got consumed with apocalyptic visions of using power to solve random problems. And when 2006 came and there was some discussion of a coming virus, no, what happened was he read a book on the 1918 pandemic in the U.S. and thought, I better prepare for pandemics.
And it gets worse, a lot worse. There is no science. In fact, there is a massive amount of opposing science, epidemiologists and microbiologists and scientists, all in 2006 trying to oppose this ridiculous idea, the lockdown and social distancing, which came from, wait for it, a 14-year-old girl's high school thesis.
Okay, that's, well, to sum up what I've said so far, the plans that were implemented starting in March at state levels, the national level, the international level, were the product of a computer science game put together by a middle school student. So, it's a really hard truth to realize, actually. It's very hard to realize.
So the question becomes, how did this extreme view, prevail? The Bush administration ultimately sided with the proponents of social distancing and shutdowns. Remember, that was one 14-year-old schoolgirl and a load of computer modelers, computer scientists, who were not medical people in any way. Through their verses, all the leading epidemiologists and doctors and everyone else who were saying, don't do it, it's complete tyranny, it's nonsense. Though their victory was little noticed outside of public health circles, their policy would become the basis for government planning and would be used extensively in simulations used to prepare for pandemics. Okay, so this is a simulation. So they're admitting here that this was to be used in simulations. They were actually going to lock down. This is the New York Times admitting this. They were actually going to lock us all down, based on a simulation. It's here in black and white, would become the basis for government planning and would be used extensively in simulations. Lockdown, real world lockdowns in simulations. Remember what the World Health Organization website plainly tells us? It's a simulation. It's a simulation of COVID-19. Yeah, this whole lockdown, Bush chose, and the modelers are not epidemiologists. They chose this article from a 14-year-old girl, and Bush had the choice between the world's leading, all the leading epidemiologist doctors, all saying this was crazy. Social distance it's nonsense. It's medieval nonsense. You can't do it. It's the lockdown idea is ridiculous. They were all fighting against it in 2006. But Bush chose the work of this 14-year-old girl here. But what is this mention of the high school daughter of 14? Her name is Laura M. Glass, and she recently declined to be interviewed. Yeah, it was her paper. Laura, with some guidance from her dad, devised a computer simulation that showed how people, family members, co-workers, students in school, people in social situations interact.
And I wondered why the epidemiologists, it seemed to me, by looking at the history of this, the epidemiologists didn't win the struggle, and that it was the computer scientists in the United States, the model builders, the people who use agent-based modeling like you get in a video game, to model what social distancing looks like, in a way very similar to what happened in the UK with Neil Ferguson and his bad model that led to the lockdowns in the UK, and really spread all over the world. Between China, the US, and the UK, every government in the world, with the exception of South Korea and Sweden, even in my own view, they both went too far with lockdowns, but they were far more liberal. And all the statisticians have shown that there seems to be absolutely zero difference in infection or death between those who locked down and those who didn't lock down. So
the paper is the Targeted Social Distancing Design for Pandemic Influenza 2006, written by Laura. Laura's name appears on the foundational paper for a 14-year-old schoolgirl. Okay, so Bush chose this paper. The Bush regime chose this paper for the lockdown idea in 2006. The 3-2 Bush, of course, Skull and Bones, and we know it's a Skull and Bones thing again. And so in 2006 we had the disease mitigation measures in control of pandemic influenza. We had this paper, this powerful paper. It says here, lockdown might be the new orthodoxy, but that doesn't make it medically sound or morally correct. At least now we know that many great doctors and scholars in 2006 did their best to stop this nightmare from unfolding. Their mighty paper should serve as a blueprint for dealing with the next pandemic. Yeah, so they basically tried to oppose the Bush regime saying this was just absolute tyranny what they're proposing.
It was a middle school science fair project, basically.
Yeah, absolute tyranny. Everyone opposed it, said it was complete garbage. Yeah, I'm going to put this link below. You've got to read it. I mean, it's absolute rock solid proof that this is the new 9/11. So we've got it here. So they're admitting here that this was to be used in simulations. They were actually going to lock down. This is the New York Times admitting this. They were actually going to lock us all down, yeah, based on a simulation. It's here in black and white. Would become the basis for government planning and would be used extensively in simulations. Lockdown, real world lockdowns in simulations. So here's what's happening in my view. There was no pandemic, no epidemic, no nothing. It was just a normal year. Apart from there were reports in very elderly people of I think it's called a cytokine storm, where your immune system completely collapses, and you have a really, really bad inflammation, full pneumonia, but something did cause that. And according to the scientific research papers I've been studying, 100% of the elderly people that died had a precondition of chronic inflammation. 100%. Chronic inflammation is caused by a really bad immune system, but from a lack of antioxidants, processed food. In Italy, they died apparently from the vaccines. The vaccines killed a lot of people in Italy, and it was a really elderly population. And everywhere in the world, they were rigging the numbers with COVID, from COVID. Like I say, if the lockdown killed people, which it did, week 14, please remember, until week 14, until the lockdown started, there was nothing going on the ONS stats. It was a flat line, and then suddenly the lockdown starts, boom, we got a massive load of deaths, and we got a load of those deaths put down as people who died with or from, we don't know, COVID-19. In my view, 100% of that was, almost 100% of that was just the flu figures being pushed forward and people dying from the lockdown. They told us that they were saving old people, and in my view, reading the World Economic Forum, from the zeitgeist and the sense I got from political blogs, it was a global initiative to actually get rid of old people. They were an exact opposite, a horrible thing to say and to think, but that's the reality of what actually happened. And they're putting it down as a cock-up theory now. What the hell happened in old people's homes? All these people died suddenly. It was a complete disaster. Was it an accident? No, I don't think it was. I don't think it was an accident. I think it was by design. And if you have a look at Boris Johnson, for example, 2007, he's writing articles saying the biggest concern we've got is overpopulation. I'm going to do another video about that. It's a separate subject, but I really do think that we've just had a global initiative to cull elderly, and not from a virus, but from neglect, from hysteria, by using the media to scare the hell out of everyone. And it's a real cruel thing what they're doing, stopping people going to visit their old age folk, loved ones. Really, really nasty, cruel thing that. And and we did a previous video about how the 322 people, Bush and all them lot, kissed the slipper of the Pope, and all working for the Pope or for the Vatican's New World Global Order. Yet it turns out the Vatican control the World Health Organization policy. So we got this, this link up again between the 322 people running this in the Vatican. Apparently, we read here that there is a broad consensus among United Nations member countries that overpopulation is a grave public health threat and would be a major cause of preventable death not too far in the future. Yeah, this is the big thing going on at the moment, and it's very, very worrying. We've got to stop it. It really does annoy me. It disgusts me. Okay, so nothing happened. There was no pandemic, no epidemic until the lockdown started and people started dying. Same everywhere. There's self-fulfilling prophecy. Was there something going on? Yeah, there was. There was something going on with really old people. A pandemic, the criteria for a pandemic, if you study the Spanish flu, decimated the young soldiers, died, in massive numbers, horrendous. Nothing even remotely close to that. Didn't fulfil any criteria of a pandemic. It just not even 1% fatality rate of the Spanish flu. Just absolute complete craziness, and nothing happened basically, apart from some old people had complete immune collapse, which I think is caused by a couple of factors, possibly a couple of external factors. An immune response. Okay, it wasn't a virus that killed them; their own immune system killed them because it was overreacting to something. And the evidence we've got from the research papers is people with eating processed food, eating shit food, possibly some other factors as well, possibly microwave radiation, as well as a bad diet. And so now you know. As I told Redwood at the time, this is the new 9/11. It's new 9/11 by the same people, the 322 people, the neocons, the Bush lot, the same lot who did the first 9/11. We can't get rid of them, and this time they're busted. Okay, because the whole premise for this tyranny was based on the work of a 14-year-old schoolgirl, and it was opposed by absolutely the entire medical establishment, at the time. Yeah. So it was political. In other words, this lockdown is not medical in any way, shape or form. It's political tyranny by the same people who brought us 9/11.
I think actually we're going to be dealing with a tremendous psychological, philosophical, intellectual problem in the coming months. Dealing with this question, how could this have happened? We've all made immense sacrifices of our lives, liberties, prosperity over the last 3 months. We've seen wreckage all around us and tragedy and sadness everywhere. I think part of us wants to believe that it served some good purpose, that there had to be some plausible rationale for it, even if it were a mistake. Something like this epic, devastating experience could never have happened unless there was some reason for it. I'm afraid that the very, very difficult answer to that question is just simply the hardest one of all to realize. That the answer is no. There is no reason for it. There was no rationale that could justify it. There's no basis on which our country rejected its very modern methods of dealing with disease, which is keep social functioning, keep everything acting normal, have people behave calmly and rationally, try to figure out what the virus is, mitigate it using medical means and medical professionals and a good healthcare system, and otherwise have life continue to function as normal. Why did we reject that in favor of a crazy cockamamie, maybe universal application of vast coercion that has caused so much disaster? The answer is that there was no reason for it. And there's no good basis for it. I think that's going to be a very, very difficult truth for the American people to have to come to terms with over the coming months, which is one of the reasons I think that it's become such a taboo to say what I just said, and why YouTube's taking down videos, why Twitter's banning accounts, why Facebook no longer allows anybody to question anything, because the truth is too difficult, actually. It's too difficult. And if it's right that this was all for naught, NAUGHT, there's going to be a lot of anger, and a lot of things are going to change. So this is one of the reasons I think that we're seeing the censorship, just because the truth is too difficult.